Hi, welcome to Women of Worth Wednesday, and I'm so excited to have my dear friend Kelly Woodward here today. I feel so grateful that we have this opportunity to kind of connect via technology with everyone out in the world. We have viewers from all over Scotland, Zimbabwe, in the Middle East, and we're so happy that High Five Live is very committed to putting out such inspirational content, especially with Women of Worth Wednesday, how much they believe in the value of women. But we have a lot of men that join us each week, and we welcome you as well, because we know that you have women in your life that you love and care about and that you connect with and share. And hi from everyone all over the world that is connecting with us. We already have someone from Switzerland, so it's so great. Kelly is one of my favorite people. And when we started thinking about having guests come on, I have to kind of pray that this goes on forever, because I have so many people that I love and I'm inspired by, women that inspire me, and Kelly is on the top of that list. Kelly has an amazing conversion story. She's a military mom. She has 7 amazing children. We love their family. My husband is their home teacher, a little plug for that. But and my son, who's serving a mission in Zimbabwe, was their home teacher, and he loves the Woodward family. And
we adore him.
Yeah,
our youngest daughter is
obsessed.
Wants to marry him, but there's quite the age gap there.
She's very tiny. So I hope that we can share a little bit of the light that I know I see in Kelly and in her family, and have her share with you her conversion story, which we had a prayer before we went live, and we kind of asked specifically that it would inspire those that are already converted to remember their conversion story, but it would also kind of inspire our viewers to understand how a member missionary really just needs to be a friend. So would you just share with our viewers a little bit about a little of your background and what brought you to the church?
Okay, so a little bit of, I'll make a long story short. My husband and I are high school sweethearts. We just celebrated 17 years of marriage.
I saw that. Happy anniversary.
Just like a week and a half ago. Yeah. And anyway, so I actually grew up Catholic, and when I was about 12 years old, my parents left the Catholic Church because of a falling out, which I still to this day have no idea what that was, but we just stopped going to church altogether.
Okay.
And so I had always been raised, you go to church every Sunday, and I went to a Catholic elementary school, so I grew up going to Mass on Fridays as a school, and then Sunday with my mom and my sister. And so, you grow up in any kind of religion, and you start to wonder, do I believe because I believe, or do I believe just because it's just been hammered into me? Yeah. And so
we all have to go through that question,
right? You have to find your testimony.
Even if you grew up in the LDS Church, whatever religion, you kind of have to find your own faith, not just your parents.
Exactly. You can't rely on others to build that foundation. So I really struggled with that when I was in my adolescence, and so I always kind of had a running dialogue with Heavenly Father in my mind, but I was always like, is he really there? Because, when you're young and a teenager, you're like, I'm not getting what I want. So, does he love me? And anyway, so flash forward to 2003, we're stationed in Germany. I'm pregnant with our first baby. My husband's deployed to Iraq, and I go into labor early. I was actually at the PX at a meeting, and my water broke.
Nice.
And so,
for all the
so
women
that was
out there.
a fun little thing.
Yeah, our favorite idea of how it's going to happen, right?
And so, I have a really great labor. I can't complain. And so they hand her to me, and they placed her on my chest. And it was in that moment that I knew without a doubt that Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ were real, and that Jesus Christ lives. And that started my quest to build my own personal testimony. So we went to a non-denominational service on base, and then we found a great non-denominational service when we were stationed in Monterey, which was a little while later. But then we got stationed in Georgia, and we were searching, and we just could not find a church. We went to Baptist service, Methodist, you name it, we tried it. And so we had some friends that around the corner from us that we had met when we moved in. The most awesome people ever, the Wrights, Kim, Thad. And
you better be watching.
I hope you're watching. There's your shout out. But they were just awesome, and they became friends. And even before, they never pushed the gospel on us. It wasn't like, let's have a talk about going to church with us. They were just our friends. We had kids that were the same age. We barbecued together. It was a really, really great.
So let me ask you, because I think sometimes we talk about being member missionaries and sharing the gospel, and you know, we have a missionary sent out, so we think about missionary work a lot. We live in Utah, and so it's a little bit easier to bring up the church, because even if you're not a member, you know about the church
out here. Mm-hmm.
But how did it look? Did they literally not talk about religion, or did
we
they just...
literally, it just never came up.
Okay.
But they waited for the right time, and that right time for us happened to be us being like, we can't find a church that we like. She was born and raised in Augusta, and so we were like, you guys, we knew they went to church because we saw them leaving every Sunday when we were leaving.
I love it.
And so we were like, hey, we know you go to church. What church do you go to? And now as a member, I'm like, oh my gosh, like
that was the golden question.
It really was, right? Like, you know, easy for them. So they invited us to church, like, well, come to church with us. And we went. It was a fast and testimony Sunday, which for me, I feel like is just the best time to bring an investigator.
Listen. Did you just hear that? Because I think in the church we always talk about how we're not really comfortable if a non-member came to church on Fast Sunday, because it would be overwhelming. But why did you think it was the best?
I think it's the best because you're not preaching doctrine, which can be a little scary and maybe not understood. It's literally people's testimony.
It's real.
It's real. There's real emotion attached behind it.
It's everyday life stuff.
Yeah, anyone can relate to it.
Yeah.
It's a good segue, I feel like, into people asking questions and wondering, you know, why people are so touched by this. I feel like sometimes it can be kind of off-putting if you're going and maybe some deep doctrine is being discussed, you know, or things that maybe you just haven't been raised with, that even though they're not like weird or strange, it just might seem strange to somebody who hasn't grown up that way.
I love that. So
that's a testimony. Maybe.
So be a friend first.
Yes.
And then it came up naturally because you asked, and then testimony meaning don't be afraid. So
yeah,
and you go to testimony meeting.
We go to testimony meeting, and you know, to be honest, like we had never been to an LDS service, and so you were like, what's going to happen? Is it going to be like, you know, some weird stuff? And so it was great, and you could feel the Spirit so strongly, and for us, that really touched us. So my husband had to go away for some training for a few months, so he decided...
To Texas, right?
Yeah, to Texas. And so he was going to investigate the church in Texas, and I was going to investigate the church in Georgia. And so really for me, my missionaries were awesome, but really it was more like I depended on my friends. Like they were my missionaries more so because I had a lot of access to them versus the missionaries. For my husband, though, he had a great missionary experience. He not only was he meeting with the elders, he actually also had a senior missionary couple who actually ended up coming out when we got sealed. And amazing. So he actually met with the missionaries every single day. And he got his testimony after I did. I am very much like a live by my heart kind of person. If it feels right, then I'm like, let's do it. Like, no questions asked. He's much more analytical and has to really study it out. Yeah. So for me, we actually kind of did it, I think, a little backwards if I think about it now, but our first lesson was actually on the eternal family. And for me, that was like, no brainer. It makes perfect sense. Yeah. And that night I started reading the Book of Mormon and I prayed about it, and I asked Heavenly Father, I was like, I'm going to need an answer in a dream. I'm like, this is, and I was very specific about what I needed.
I love that you asked Heavenly Father to communicate with you in a way that you knew
that I would be able to understand.
You would be able to recognize it.
Yeah.
I think that's so powerful.
Because I didn't understand what feeling the Spirit meant. Even though looking back now, I can be like, oh, that was the Spirit. But at the time, I just didn't have that reference.
In the gospel, yeah.
And so I had this dream where I had myself and we had 2 kids at the time, and I was pregnant with our third. And I had a dream that we were in this big and spacious building, and we were lost, and I had my children with me. And we hadn't even heard Lehi's dream yet. Like,
God is so cool.
It's amazing. And so we were in this building, and it was dark and it was scary, and I remember like holding my children to me and just being like, we have to get out of here. This is a bad place to be.
How many children did you have at the time?
2 when I was pregnant with our third.
Okay. And she has 7 now.
I have 7 now.
You can do the math.
And so we
when a previous Catholic becomes a Mormon, you're going to have 7 kids.
You're going to have I want a lot of kids always, my poor husband. And so and all of a sudden the missionaries showed up in my dream, and I knew, I'm like, if we follow the missionaries, we'll be okay. We'll be safe. And so that for me, I was like, it's all true. Like, it's all true. And it was very easy for me. And I know that doesn't always happen for everybody. But for me, it just made sense for me. And so that started the whole thing. So that was in...
So in the dream, you're in the great and spacious building and you're lost, but the missionaries show you the
and
way.
they show us the way out, and I knew we were going to be safe.
Don't you love that? Oh, I love
fine.
that. Okay.
And so that was in July of 2006, and then we were baptized September 26th of 2006. And
so just over 10 years you've been members.
We've been just over 10 years.
Okay.
It was 11 years this year.
Wow.
And so, yeah, and you know, like...
And Jason was back in Texas doing this training.
And he was.
And he had missionaries. For all the missionary families out there that are missing their missionaries right now during this time of year, senior missionaries and missionaries every day met with him. And just quickly tell people that are watching, where was his logical brain taking him?
So he actually met with missionaries hoping to disprove everything that they were going to tell him. He was like, it's all phony, like, you know, like, nice idea, but really, like, there's no way. And so he set out with the idea of to disprove everything. And he really, you know, the missionaries finally told him, like, look, we can sit here and we can quote scripture,
debate.
and we can debate, and we can show you everything. They're like, but ultimately, you have to pray about it, and you have to be in the frame of mind to receive an answer. And that was a big thing. So they were like, we're not going to meet with you anymore until you have really thought about it. So it took him like a week and a half to 2 weeks.
To wrestle with the Spirit.
To wrestle with it. And finally, he had a dream one night. And for him, he was in a big arena. And his dad, so his family, just kind of a quick backstory. His family was very, very much against this.
Yes.
I mean, they had never asked about our spiritual beliefs or anything before, but then, like, we told them we were investigating, and it was like stuff out of the woodworks. Mm-hmm. I mean, it was like, you know, it was just all this anti-stuff.
Contention.
And there was a lot of that. And so, anyway, so he had this dream, and he's in an arena, and all of his family is there, and his dad steps out of, like, the crowd, and he tells them, he's like, I'm proud of you, and I think you should continue on this path. Even though in real life, like, it was not that way. It was Heavenly Father sent him the message that he needed to be okay with becoming a member. And so, you know, and all these things, like, we still have our, you know, we still have our moments where we learn new things, and we're like, okay, like, how do I like digest this, and how does this, you know, fit into my faith, and you know, like,
I think we're all like that. I think that's so important, and why in the prayer that we prayed before we came live, I prayed that those that are already converted or members would be reconverted by listening to this. Because listen, the truth is, we're always, always, always working on conversion. Yeah. And we're members. If you're watching and you're not a member of the church, we welcome you. But if you are a member of the church, we're a living, breathing, growing religion, mm-hmm. which means handbooks change and leadership changes. And so I think that's crucial to say that just because you have an initial conversion experience like you both
had, not done.
It's not done. Yeah. We're always learning and growing and being challenged.
And we tell that to our kids all the time, because it can be kind of like, well, everyone else seems to be doing so well. And I always tell my kids, I'm like, your faith, your testimony, it's a living, breathing thing. If you don't feed it, it's going to die off. And so, and I always tell them, like, having faith and having a testimony does not mean your life is going to be easy by any means.
Right.
You know, I always tell them, I'm like, with more, you know, light becomes more responsibility. And so, like, if anything, it actually feels harder.
Yes.
And when we were first members, I remember thinking, like, oh my gosh, like, sometimes you just wish, like, you could go back to being naive, so you didn't feel like you had to be so responsible.
Where it was a party in the great and spacious building.
Right.
Where people are mocking and having fun and making you think that you're kind of the crazy ones because you're trying to live this path of conversion.
And it can be easy as a new member to get hung up on the fact that everyone else looks like, gosh, your testimony is so easy and so strong. Right. And I realize everyone's path is different. And we have things that, having grown up most of our life outside of the church, like, we have, like, our edges are a little rough, you know, but that's okay.
Listen, though, I think also you're a family that has so much heart. And I think sometimes that's why there's such a blessing to any ward community or family when converts come, because they bring a life experience and perspective that I think is crucial. So we're out of time, but I want her to just share a little bit about, we talked about this, and we're going to have her back on, because there's this great perspective of being a mom of a large family. But why don't you share quickly about getting a priesthood blessing and Jason being gone and one of your beautiful kids?
So real quick, 2010, I'm pregnant with our fifth, and my husband is sent overseas for a little over a year. Our fifth. And my husband, I think, was done at 4. But we were pregnant. We waited to find out the sex of the baby. So our ultrasounds were just, kind of like, let's just check the organs in the brain and make sure everything's growing correctly. So I have him 2 weeks early. My water breaks at home, and I don't make it to the hospital. I had a very dear friend who almost literally had to deliver him, but thankfully the EMT showed up in time. Right before that, her husband came home to grab my kids and her kids, and while he was there, I received a priesthood blessing, which prior to this I'd only received like one before. It just wasn't something I was accustomed to asking for. And in all honesty, the blessing, I just wanted to make the pain go away. If anyone's had natural childbirth, it doesn't feel good. Mm-hmm. And so I really just wanted the pain to stop, and it didn't do that, unfortunately. But what it did do was prepare me for this next life-changing experience. Having a baby is already life-changing, but he was born with limb differences. So the EMTs didn't realize that I didn't know. So they wrap him up in that,
So for those that aren't familiar, a limb difference
is usually arms, legs, hands, feet, anything that is usually deformed or missing.
But we like to call it limb differences.
Limb differences.
Instead of deformities.
Yeah. Although either one is, I get
fine.
it. Like we're
human.
We're human. And so he was born missing most of his hands. He has, if you were to look at his hand, it'd be like a triangle and then like the middle finger. So he's missing all of this on both hands. It's perfectly symmetrical. And then his feet are very similar in that he's missing about a third of his foot as well, and just has one toe on each of his feet. But they handed him to me, and we didn't know the sex, and so we were like, oh, my husband just happened to be on the phone in Iraq when he was born, so we got to hear his birth, and, we didn't know what the sex was. We're like, well, what is it? And they're like, it's a boy, and, I was like, woohoo, I was right. And, but then his hand comes out of this little, the little foil blanket they have, and it takes your mind a moment to process.
Your brain is registering,
but
this hand doesn't look like
right,
I thought it would.
I'm like, what's wrong with his hand?
Yeah.
And Jason, my husband, is like, what's going on? What's wrong? And I'm like, I don't know. And then I see his other hand and then his feet, and I'm like, what is wrong with my baby? And I'm the crier. I'm the one who breaks down, and I know without a shadow of a doubt that blessing helped me to be strong, because my husband completely lost it. I have only heard him cry like that one other time in my life, and that was when his grandfather passed away. And it's just the most heartbreaking thing. And I know that blessing helped me get through, and it gave me the confirmation that I needed, that somehow everything was going to be okay. Everything was going to work out, and we were going to be fine. And he really is an anomaly. He has no other health issues, no syndromes. His body is completely normal from the ankles and wrist inward. It's just literally his hands and feet. And we have another son that has the same condition.
So that's what I wanted to share with you, is that we were talking about, there's so much that we could talk about, but that without the gospel, without a priesthood blessing, Kelly shared with me before we went on live that how you would have handled that moment and going forward would have been completely different.
It would have been. I think it would have been much more devastating. And don't get me wrong, I definitely had my moment in the hospital when everyone had left and nobody was calling. I mourned for what I thought I was losing. And let me tell you, he is the most able-bodied, capable 7-year-old you would ever meet. I mean, he's amazing. Well, I had no reason to be sad.
Yeah.
But at the time, you just don't know.
But your faith carries you forward. Looking back, your light at that time and understanding was, what are all the what ifs?
Right.
And one of the cool parts of the story is that because he's an anomaly, they had worried so much about, like, this sweet boy who I love all of your kids so much, but this boy, would he feel so alone in his life because there would be no one that he could identify with? And then a few years ago, you had another little baby.
And my husband was he was definitely sad. I didn't have that sadness this time. Because I had a frame of reference.
Yes.
2,
so this baby was born with the exact
same condition.
So they have each other. These
they
brothers.
do, and that was really for me an answer to prayer. Like, I didn't want.
Don't you love that?
My son to be alone, and now they have each other, and they're just amazing boys. They really, and all my kids, I love them all equally. Like, they're all special, but these boys really are. They just amaze me all the time. I'm always amazed. And every time I think they can't do something, they just prove me wrong.
And Kelly amazes me too, because we haven't even talked about being a military wife and how often her husband has been gone and deployed and juggling this beautiful family that's busy and full. And so we will definitely have Kelly back on. And I hope that this message, thank you for sharing your conversion. And for those of you that are out there, please share this video, not just with another woman that you value in your life, but specifically, I think what I love about this is that it shows that Heavenly Father is so aware of what we need and when we need it. And He's putting certain people in our lives at the certain time so that we have all that we need to go forward. And in the military specifically at this time of year, especially over the holidays, we were talking about the bond that happens between military families, but hopefully within the church, that going forward in this next year, that we just do a better job of being friends.
And that's the one
just
thing I
be
could
friends
say.
to each other and love each other,
If
right?
you honestly care about your neighbors who aren't members, or people you work with who aren't members, and you are really just their friend, naturally the church will come up somehow. They'll look at you and they'll, just the way you live your life and the way you treat them, it itself will be a beacon and cause them to wonder why you are the way you are. And that's really the biggest advice I could give, is really truly caring and not going, okay, I'm going to care about them so I can get them,
baptized.
Yeah. And not that a lot of people do that, but it can definitely show through. Yeah. And so just being
also,
genuine.
I guess then in a closing thought is, if someone is not interested in church and that's not something you have in common, to make sure you have people in your life that are of different religions and walks of life, and don't stop being their friend when they're not interested.
Diversity is, there's a reason God made us all so diverse, and we all need that in our lives, and our children need that, to see that, everyone has something to contribute, and we can learn something from everybody.
Yes. Thank you, Kelly. Thanks for being, she's one of my favorite people, and thank you for joining us again. We'll be back here next Wednesday, but this video will be available right after, and thank you, Kelly, and Happy New Year to everyone this weekend as it comes up, and take care and love your neighbor. Find a neighbor to love today.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, guys.